The votes are still coming in, but it seems likely that Clinton will win Kentucky on the strength of her urban dominance. So which is right? Did her obvious demographic advantage with southern white Christians get her the win? Or does the unexpected closeness of the race suggest she's caving in key constituencies? It's both. Let's remind ourselves that my claim was that Clinton should have won Kentucky by a very large margin. So the fact that it was very close is an upset. I know that the media was pushing a different line, but the media is usually wrong. It's surprising when the media is right. So it's both. Okay, forget about the east of the states, the jackass vote that's been brainwashed by talk radio with irrational Clinton hating. I mean, there's lots of reasons to not like Clinton and everything, don't get me wrong here, but none of those reasons suggest you support Sanders if you're a rural conservative Kentuckian. One could make a very strong argument that the support that you saw for Sanders in the east of Kentucky was people voting against their own interests. That area will vote overwhelmingly for Trump. It means nothing to Sanders, his campaign, or his chances as an independent, nor does it mean anything to Clinton, whether she's holding her voters. But she should have won in the South by large numbers. She carried whites in Tennessee by a substantial margin, and she should have won in the suburbs or in Cincy, Lexington, and Louisville. It's not coal country, it's basically Ohio. So also note that Kentucky is a close primary, so she didn't get flooded with independents. Clinton got beat in large amounts of Kentucky in one of her core demographics. There's no real excuse there for that. She got beat. She did well enough in the cities that she can avoid going into crisis mode, but the results should nonetheless be very concerning to her campaign. All evidence suggests that if this vote was on Super Tuesday, and when I say Super Tuesday, I mean March 15th, she would have probably got close to 65%. So what happens if you let them vote in July? It's kind of, the results are kind of somewhere between, right? They were nowhere near as good for Clinton as I suggested they should be. And I'm providing an explanation for that. I'm saying, well, the demographics leaned one way 3 months ago. They don't lean the same way today as they did then. So what's happened is that the demographics have changed over that period, which is the crux of my argument and has been for a long time, but which the models, I mean, the whole point of the models is that the demographics are predictive, whereas I'm arguing that in many circumstances demographics can change, right? So, I mean, to begin with, I think that, that we're reading the demographics wrong in the first place, but, they shouldn't be predictive, right? I think that the proper read into the demographics would have been Clinton winning by about the same margin she won in Tennessee, based on the fact that she won white voters in Tennessee by a large margin, and she won white voters in Ohio by a large margin, and she also won that area of Indiana right on the border by a large margin. So everything was suggesting that she should win by a large margin, and she didn't in a closed primary. I do think that the results that you're seeing in Kentucky last night do suggest that if there was a vote in Tennessee tomorrow, the results would not be clear. And we're seeing other polling come out. For example, Sanders is beating Trump in Georgia, and he's doing better than Clinton is. It's hard to see how you can create that result and still have Clinton win Georgia by the margins that she won. That's implicit, right? But it's still real. So is a kind of a problem in the way that the United States does its election cycle. I really think that the people in these states should not be forced to vote at the very beginning of the election cycle. They should have the ability to. I think everybody should vote at the same time, and it should be after a long election cycle. In Canada, our elections tend to be, our elections are short, but our campaigns are perpetual because the person that's going to be prime minister is the head of the party all the time, right? It's not like you pick an independent president, it's just the head of the party. So we can have short campaigns, short technical campaigns, but perpetual campaigning, right? The nature of the system in the United States means that when you have a candidate like this, it's unfair to the vote. I know that a lot of people will spin it the other way. They'll say that the people that have the earlier votes get to define the race and etc. etc. That's a really stupid way to look at it. It's the voters at the beginning are actually at an unfair advantage because they don't have enough time to research the candidate. It's the voters at the end of the cycle that are in a better position because they understand what's happening, right? And I think everybody should have that advantage of having a lengthy cycle so that there is a debate, and people come out at the end and they're able to pick the vote. They're able to pick the candidate that actually reflects their values. And I think it's very unfortunate that the results of the primary seem to have been locked in at a point where most people hadn't really made a choice yet. And we're seeing that, right? Like I say, I think that all evidence suggests that if Kentucky had voted, at the end of February or the beginning of March, Clinton would have destroyed him. Okay. Despite what, these racist models suggest, Kentucky is a white Southern Christian state. White Southern Christians have, near the beginning of the primary anyways, voted overwhelmingly for Clinton. She won them in all the surrounding states. Why wasn't she able to win them by the same margins here? Because they've changed. And if they've changed there, there's every reason to think that they've changed elsewhere. And like I say, there is data that supports that. It's not going to help Sanders with his argument, right? Or at least the argument that he's presenting, the argument that he wants. He wants to win the, Democratic primary kind of thing. But I do think it's a very strong argument that he should run as independent. Because he's not going to just beat her, in places like Michigan. It's starting to become clear that he'll probably beat her in her own backyard, in her own strong areas. If the curve continues as it is, it's going to be, Clinton as the third party candidate here. Like, I've been over this in a few different vlogs. It's going to have to be very delicate as to the decision as it comes up. Why and how to do it, right? But they should be very, very concerned that she barely beat him in Kentucky, which should have been a stronghold for her.